Good morning, everybody. This is Sekou Tyler, and I am the guest host this week for Workout Wednesday. With this Workout Wednesday, we're going to take a look at what if parameters within Power BI. With the release of Shang-Chi and the Legends of the Ten Rings, I decided to take a look at the highest grossing superhero films, and we're going to display the top movies based on user selection. So let's hop into it. So for our data set, if we go to wikipedia.com, I found a list of highest grossing superhero films. So in this format is a simple table for us. So we're able to see all this information. So we're not going to do any CSV. We're going to pull it directly from Wikipedia itself. So let's go ahead and copy the hyperlink and let's hop into Power BI. So we go into here, we go into Get Data. Let's go to Web. Let's paste that URL. So we see here the first table has the information that we want. We want the rank, we want the film, we want the worldwide gross, and we don't really need the reference, but we're not going to transform anything. The biggest thing that we want here is the film and the worldwide gross. Let's go ahead and bring in that table and let's hit load. We're not going to do any transformations in here. We're just going to keep it as is. Right, so now that we have our data in here, the first step that we're going to do is we're going to create a what if parameter. So if you're not familiar with it, what if parameter is basically an option in here. If you go to the modeling tab, you can select new parameter. So let's go in here and click it. And basically we have to give it a name. For this one, we're going to just call it what if. And if you haven't used this before, here's the data type that we can give it. So we can give it a whole number, decimal number, or fixed decimal number. For this scenario, we're looking at the top 50 films. So we're going to keep this as a whole number. And then you can have a minimum and maximum. So for this scenario, we're going to go all the way up to 50 because according to the Wikipedia page, there are top 50 movies that are in this data source. So we're going to keep it as a maximum of 50, and we want to keep the 0 in here. You can change it to 1, but for this scenario, we're going to keep the 0 in here. For increments, we're going to leave this as 1 because when I'll show you later, you'll be able to have a sliding scale of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. But if you ever want to change that to be 0.5 or 0.7 or whatever the increments is, as you select it, you would come here and change that increment. And then you come in here and select add slicer to page. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And so now you see that you have a new table. If we go to the data view in here within itself, we see there's actually a disconnected table. It's not connected to our original table. It's just a disconnected table. And if we look at what it's actually doing, it's using a generate series function. So if you ever need to come in here and change any of the information, say you want to go to 60, 70, or 80, or even less than 50, you just come in here and change this value here. Same thing if you don't want 0 anymore, but you actually want to start at 1, you just come here and select 1. And if you want to change the increment, you can change it here to that 1.5, 1.7, like I talked about earlier. And then the actual value that it created is just using the selected value of the parameter that you selected. So now we have our what if parameter. Now let's actually use it. So let's go ahead and slide it over. And now we see that when you have the slicer, you see that it's now doing an increments of 0 to 1. So let's go ahead and leave this at 0 for right now. So use case is we want to look at the top N movies based on the user selection. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a measure of just the worldwide gross. So we're going to create a new measure. We're going to call it worldwide sales. Worldwide sales. No, this is just the sum of our worldwide gross. We're just going to call it and create a new measure because we're going to use this in our DAX here in a few. So create that. So what we have is we're going to create a new measure. We're going to call it top N movies. I already did some of the DAX for you, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new measure. And I'll explain what it's doing. So the first part of the measure is looking at the selected top. So we created a variable called selected top, and what it's doing is looking at the variable that we created, and we're just creating that as a selected value. And then in our return statement, we created a switch statement. So basically what the switch statement is doing is if I selected 0, then show me all of the cells. In the second portion, now we're using a rank function, and what this is doing is saying if my user selection is less than the rank, then only show me those values. So let's go ahead and plot that information into a bar chart. So if we come in and create stack bar chart, we're going to have our film. And then we're going to use that new measure that we created. I guess I didn't save. Let's go ahead and create that again. There we go. Now we have it. Now we have our top N movies. So let's go ahead and plot the top N movies into our values. So now we see here, we just do a little bit of rearranging, extend this a little bit. We see here now that we have 0 selected, so we're showing every single film on here. But if I was to change the scale to say 6, now we see that we're only showing this top 6 films. So now it gives us that dynamic user capability that we're looking for. So it allowed a user to do some type of top N filtering, top selection, so on and so forth with this what if parameter. So this is the first use case, but say my audience actually wants to see all of the movies and not just necessarily filter it all on one page, all on one visual. We can quickly create a table visual that gives them some information, and then we can do some conditional formatting to give them some additional context to see what the top N selection is. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's quickly just create a table. And within the table, we're going to use the film. And then we're going to use, this time we're going to use worldwide sales. And we're actually going to sort by sales this time. And so right now, because we're using this, we don't have any filtering on this. What we're going to do is we're going to create another measure that we're going to use for some conditional formatting. So if I come in here and create a new measure, and it's very similar to what we used earlier, except there's a couple changes. So for this one, we're going to remove the 0. We don't want the 0 in here. We're just going to hide this one. And for this one, we're going to give it a 1 and 0. You could do a RGB code if you want to do this, if you want to change it that way, or you can just do 1, 0 and use that as your conditional formatting. Kind of your preference. For this example, I'm just going to do 1 and 0 in the switch statement. So basically this is saying whenever my user selection is less than the ranking, then give me 1, else then give me 0. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to use these as our conditional formatting indicators. So let's go ahead and create this. So if we then put this in our table, we should now see 1s and 0s based on our user selection. So our top 6, we move it to top 10. We see the information in here. So now we see that this is controlled both charts with the same what if slicer. So let's go in here and let's just do some quick conditional formatting. So a couple ways you can do it. If you come in here, click this drop down menu, say conditional formatting. For this one, we're just going to do icons. And for this one, we're going to use the rules. So we're going to use our indicator. And for this one, we want the icons only to show. And we're only going to do is. So we're not doing a %, we're doing is number. So when it's 1, then give me the green icon. We're going to remove this one. When this is 0, give me the gray icon. So now we see a little bit of context in here. It changes it up. So now you have your top end. You can see the movies from a bar chart perspective, but then from a whole table, you can see exactly what has been selected. Just from a color perspective, there's a couple things we can do here. If we want to change the color of it, we can do the same functionality and use that indicator as well. But for this one, these are always going to show. So let's go ahead and just do the same green. Let's see if I can find it. Luckily, I did some homework already, so I already have the RGB saved for you that matches the green. So let's go ahead and do that, paste that in here. If we want to do some analytic components in here, we create a constant line, and that constant line is based, sorry, not a constant line. It's the chart I want. Sorry, I had a different chart. If we want to do any type of analytics, we want to do the clustered bar chart. That gives us more options than just your standard stack bar chart. So let's go ahead and change that to a clustered bar chart, create an average line, and then now we have our average line that is based on our top end values measure that we created. And then you can come in here and play with it if you want to change the color of it to say be black, dotted, you know, there's a lot of different options in here so you can have the solid line in here. And then now is dynamic based on the selection. So we see the average is showing. Then also within the average, if we want to add the data label, we can do that as well. For this one, we can put this at the, we'll put this under for now. We'll play around with it, see if we like this one, but let's put it at the bottom. Actually, you know what? I don't want to keep the label on. I just want to keep the line. So as we see here, information is dynamically based on user selection. We have the information that we want. We have the icons and we have the contextual information in here. So this is a really quick example on what if parameters. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, you know, welcome. Thanks for joining my Workout Wednesday and have a great day.